Hello and welcome to the Xiong and Klaw Geek Out podcast. This week we're talking about physical versus digital and whether or not the current swing towards digital is a good thing or not. So sit back and enjoy the show.
Hey guys, and welcome to the podcast. As you know, we're talking about digital versus physical. What is better for value? What is better for choice? Do you get more with digital? Do you get more with physical? To give you some stats about digital versus physical, in the UK in 2020s, the total being 85.4% of digital items being sold. This is regarded more of the gaming community rather than overall streaming services. That is paving the way for more of the Microsoft and Sony to be pushing out more of the digital-only versions of the consoles.
Yeah, and I imagine that stat's probably even higher in the music industry now, because, let's be honest, who buys physical albums anymore, unless you're buying like an LP or something? So I for one have gone pretty much 100% digital with everything now. So music, that's pretty much a no-brainer. You just use Spotify and Apple Music and Google Play and all those kind of things out there that just make it so much easier to listen to music now, and for the price of one album per month. I mean, who wasn't buying at least one album per month when they were buying physical? So
I think, talking about streaming music, I think Spotify have upped their game where they've got more artists on there. Because there was a time when, like, for Kelly Osbourne, for example, they had only like changes and the remixes of changes, and that was it. But now lately, probably last year sometime, they had all of the rest of the music on. Which I think if you're gonna try and beat other competitors with streaming music, you kind of need to be like, right, okay, we need to get nearly everybody who's ever released something on here, because otherwise you're going to go outsource it from somewhere else.
Oh, absolutely. I think the thing was, in the earlier days of music streaming, like Apple and Spotify and that were trying to get a few exclusives from artists to give people a reason to go to their streaming service.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. And I think the other thing was, for a very long time there were various record labels and other music companies that were quite resistant to the digital market, so they wanted to give maybe older stuff but not give the latest albums, and I think they've all just kind of realised that,
like Taylor Swift, there was a time where none of her music was on there and a lot of fans kicked off. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but it was about the record company didn't want the music being streamed that way. They were wanting people to buy the album rather than...
Oh yeah, because it's something ridiculous like 0.5 cent per play, if that, versus a couple of dollars per album.
Because I know when Steps came back out with their first brand new stuff, I think Claire and Faye were on some program on Channel 5, I forgot what it's called, but they talk about back in the old days it was are you number one album, number one single and all this, and they were saying it's really confusing now because it's all about how many times you've been downloaded, how many times you've been streamed, how many times of this. So it is weird how everything's kind of changed, because I'm sure you remember listening to the Radio 1 or whatever on a Sunday night, listening to who's number one.
Yeah, but I think it's also that, and social media has almost killed the long-lasting artist. A few artists still manage it, but on the whole, a lot more bands now are 1 or 2 albums and they're done because everybody's moved on to the next thing.
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
Because it's so easy to do that. Advertising channels are now very different to what they were before.
With social media now, you get advertisements for all sorts of things, so that's how new bands, I think, crop in at times as well.
Oh yeah.
And I think the Spotify recommend, you like this band, you may like, or other people like this band, you may never have heard of them, but then, so I can see what you mean by how, after a few albums it's right, okay, we're not popular anymore because they've moved on to the next
fad
thing.
It's the way that you even get record companies and labels now advertising playlists on Spotify.
Yeah.
But again, that's not really advertising an artist. They're just going, oh, come and listen to like all our artists because we get money from all of it, and hopefully you'll like 2 or 3 of them and listen deeper.
I've got to say that I've done that where Spotify have done your like daily mix or daily weekly mix, and even though some songs that you probably listen to on repeat constantly, like I do, crop up in that list, but they kind of base it off what that song is. So if it's rock, you probably find they'll do a daily mix of rockish music, and then you'll have another one where if it was pop, it's more poppy. And I have found some artists going through that. So
oh yeah, and then every now and again the algorithm will just get it completely wrong and give you like rap metal or something, and you'll just be like, and
yeah,
next.
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
But no, so yeah, I think I guess the physical side for the music industry now is pretty much the resurgence of vinyl. I think there's that kind of more hobby orientated music file type people who are like, oh, vinyl just sounds better.
As you know, I've got a vinyl record player and I've got some vinyls. I wouldn't collect or go out my way to buy every single album that I've ever truly loved on vinyl or anything new on vinyl. I will only pick the ones I hold dear to my heart. So like Placebo and Meds, ABBA Gold, for reasons.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like there's a few artists I want who are new to the scene, but it's a reason why I want those albums. But like I wouldn't purposely go out and buy my whole CD collection on vinyl. But like you said, I think vinyl's become more of a hobby.
Yeah,
it's coming back. I wouldn't say it's coming back in style, because like we're saying, streaming services have got it all covered. But I think, you know, for someone who wants the odd CD even or vinyl, it's there for them to grab.
Yeah, I think for me now it becomes more of a collector piece, like a picture disc or funky coloured disc, or, you know, sleeve that's got a really nice piece of artwork on it, or you know, something that just makes it special and unique. I guess displayable as well.
It's not just about the music industry. Obviously, you know, we've mentioned Netflix and Amazon.
Yeah, and again, I moved house like reasonably recently, and at that point made the conscious decision of like, I'm just not buying Blu-rays or DVDs anymore, because moving all of that stuff around is just a pain in the arse.
Oh yes, I know.
It's like all of my CDs went to the charity shop, a whole bunch of DVDs went to the charity shop, and I just kind of kept the ones that, you know, I know I'm going to watch again, because there's no point in rebuying them digitally. But now I'll rent or buy digital, even for video stuff. Yeah,
I have a thing about box sets. So if there's a TV show that I've loved, I'd rather have it on a physical box set. And I think it's more of a going back to like childhood, where, you know, you put it on your shelf, you kind of display it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, again, it's more of you're using it as a display piece, rather than...
And I think there's always that chance of, where can I watch such and such? So for example, I'll use Buffy. I know for a while that no services had Buffy, and then I think it got moved around a lot, because I'm sure Netflix had it at one point, but now it's on Channel 4.
Yeah, and then a lot of places now have that god-awful HD remaster that the studio did without even consulting Josh Whedon in the slightest.
Unfortunately, that's the version they have on all 4.
Oh, and what were they thinking? It's just like they changed the cropping so that there's now cameras and lights in the shot. They didn't then go back over and do any of the colour corrections, so scenes that were meant to be kind of at dusk or at night are suddenly in bright daylight, and all these kind of weird ass things. It's just
I'm
horrible.
sure it's somebody in a high chair in the company going, yeah, we'll HD the shit out of this, but not really thinking, hang on, what we're doing. It's nice that they have that. You've got, if one service doesn't have it, the other one has, but it is weird how, because I think I was mentioning to you the other day how you need like a Disney Plus account to watch Marvel stuff. You need a Netflix account for this and that. It's weird.
It's weird, but still, I think if you add up like 3 or 4 streaming services, it's still cheaper than what satellite or cable services are in most countries.
Oh yeah, I understand that. I think if you look at the bigger picture like that, you do understand. But I think when when something comes out that you want to watch, but it's on a different service, and then you have to go and sign up for that service and pay whatever, it's like, for God's sake, you know. But like you said, if you think about all the DVDs and Blu-rays you bought over the years, and count up how much money that was, and then compare it to how much you pay to whatever services you use, you probably find out it's a lot cheaper to stream, because you're going to get a lot more than that one film.
It's the whole thing of they make it cheaper because they then get a consistent, predictable income, which is actually worth quite a lot. You can do all your investments in a more intelligent way and get more money that way. There's all manner of ways they generate money because they're getting this constant stream in. I mean, that's why Microsoft now does Game Pass. You know, Game Pass is insane value. Utterly mental what you get with Game Pass for the price of Game Pass versus, you know, how much it costs you to go out and buy games individually. So
like you mentioned, Microsoft, it's not just music and films that are going streaming and digital, it's also the gaming community is going digital as well, which they have made a very fast approach at.
Oh yeah, I think it's the streaming angle that everybody's most eager to get a cut of the pie, and I think Microsoft have properly got way ahead of both Sony and Nintendo on that one.
Oh, I will agree with you on that one. Obviously, they brought one out before this with the Xbox One S, which is the old version.
Yes.
They only did the digital one, and I did read somewhere they were going to see how sales went for that one.
Yeah, so they did the S, and the S all digital was their first attempt. I mean, Sony have made attempts at it. I just think Sony tried the all digital route a bit too soon, because they tried it with the Vita, and the Vita all digital version just was horrible.
I want to say, I think with Microsoft doing it when they did, I know there was a lot of why do I want it digital and all that. But I think they experimented with that, and I don't know if they changed anything or whatever for the new versions of Xboxes they brought out. But I think with what's going on in the world as well, and being in lockdown and everything, it's worked to Microsoft's advantage.
Yeah, and I think
not saying that they planned it or anything, but you know, I think because they've tried it, gone, right, this is where we went wrong, did it again, as where Sony now are bringing out, we're bringing out a digital PS5. It's like, yeah, you've kind of...
Yeah, and I think Microsoft read the market well on that as well, because they were like, who wants a disk drive? And the people who want a disk drive are your more hardcore gamers who've been around a long time, and who are then the people who are more likely to want the full fat, expensive, all the bells and whistles, full grunt power system, and then do the all digital as the, you know, the slightly more cut down system that the Series S is, as incredible as it is. Whereas Sony have just gone, we'll just slice the drive off the side, which has then meant that the price differential for the PS5 versus the PS5 all digital just isn't as big, so there's just not that same appeal to go for it. So I think we've talked an awful lot about digital side of things, which is probably a bit telling of the way things are going. But I guess it's then that, you know, what would lead you to go out and buy a physical copy of a game, or...
See, I'm torn between it. If it's a game that I particularly a fan of the series, say, and they're doing the collector's edition, and you get a figure and an art book and this and that with it, or whatever, for a reasonable price, then I'll go for the physical. Because I would like the figurine, because, you know, buying gaming or any kind of figurine, if you want a good quality, it is going to cost you nearly 50, 60, 100 pounds to buy one. As if you're paying 70 quid for a collector's edition, which includes a game, an art book and a figurine, you might as well go for it.
Even then, they've started putting digital codes in a lot of the collector's editions now, I've noticed. It's like I got the Sonic Mania collector's edition, It was like 3-4 years ago now. And even then, that came with a digital copy of the game and then all the statue and everything. I've even seen some of these ones where you get the steel case, like steel DVD case, but still no actual physical disc in the box. They just give you a download code.
Which, that makes sense, and yeah, I can see why most people do that, because you haven't got a game clogging up your shelf anymore or anything. But then again, them sending out a DVD case for it is... I think it all depends on if you've got the room or not. If you know you've got the room for the statue and everything, then why not go for it? If you know you've not got the room or you're very tight on space, that's where the digital side of things come. And I know some games do the digital artwork book and all that, but it's not the same feel as having that on your shelf where you can pull out and flick through it. And I know digital games do the whole, we'll give you like 10 new skins for this game on release and all this, which is great, but to me, I'm not too bothered about skins and skins of weapons. No. I know they do all the stuff for other games. I'm just going off one type of genre of game, as most people will tell. But there are pros and cons for each side. But
yeah, well, I think it's getting to the point now where they may as well just release the statues and things separately, even if they release it as a limited edition thing that comes out the same time as the game. Then just sell it as that. And I think they've even they've done that with a few things. So with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I seem to remember when I was looking at the different editions of that, you had then choices. I think there's like 2 or 3 different statues you could get with it, and then you could also buy all of those statues just as buy the statue.
See, yeah, I don't mind that. I know you can go to, like you said, Valhalla, which is Ubisoft. I know you can go to Ubisoft store and you can probably buy that statue off the store itself. But to me, when that happens, I think it's outrageous that they want you pay they want you to pay like £60-70 for a game. Then they want you to pay that same amount for a statue. And I'm not saying the statue is bad quality or anything, but especially if they're kind of reselling what should have came with the game, that's when I'm like, okay, so you're selling it for the same price as the game.
Yeah,
I know what I'm getting at. If I was paying like £100, I bought the God of War 3 special edition where it came with the big statue of Kratos and his son's name that I can't remember. Well, his fake name, I remember his true name, which I won't say because it'll spoil the game. But that all cost £100. Now, if they sold that statue for £100 by itself, I would be a bit judgmental because it's not like the best top end quality. I would only pay like that kind of money for a statue if it was like, top of the art, oh my god, kind of.
And there's a lot of that out there. I mean, and I think a lot of these things have come about because they've been afraid of the whole. They still need to give the shops that sell the hardware other things to sell.
Yeah.
And again, I think with COVID and the rise of Amazon and all that kind of thing, I think that fear's probably crumbling because there are now quite a few avenues where, a place is quite happy to just sell the consoles without caring about the fact they're not then selling games off.
Talking about that, you've got the shops that sell like the old generation games like the Wii stuff and Xbox and PlayStation 1, 2, 3s. Especially with Xbox going backwards compatible with all games, so they say, I know they're working on it. It depends if all games are. Those kind of like pre-owned game shops, it would probably come to the end where it would be only consoles or figurines they sell, because if you can buy an old game off the Xbox, so say Breakdown for the original Xbox for $5.99 off Microsoft themselves, but then the pre-owned game selling it for £10, you're going to go to Microsoft.
Well, yeah, and I think that's where they've got to be very careful about the pricing on the online stuff, because it's great now that you can get backward compatible games still digitally, but there's been a lot of missteps in that. It's like Nintendo keep doing their re-releases of SNES and NES games on their later systems and then charging silly prices for them. I think Sony have done the same in the past, where they've kind of re-released things and gone like, "Hey, it's £25." It's like, no, sell it to me for a £5.
I mean, Microsoft have done the exact same thing. I don't mind paying that much extra for an old game if it was one of those it's rare to get hold of, or it's one of those that is like super duper popular type things. But when it's like an old game, I'll use Breakdown for example, because not a lot of people know about Breakdown. If they were charging me 25 quid for that, I would go to the pre-owned place if it was cheaper.
Oh yeah.
Because I know what it's worth, if that makes... Well, it is a brilliant game, by the way, people just look it up. But I can understand if some are overpriced than others, if it's... Like I said, if it's like a rare game or something, but if they're doing it digitally, it's not going to be that rare anymore, because anyone can just...
Yeah.
Get it. But going back to the retail, you know, like you said with COVID and everything, I think it has pushed a lot of people to go more digitally than anything. And even, you know, if things do get better or slightly better, the question is the high street kind of had it?
Oh, definitely. I think the other thing that's blown my mind, just going back on the backward compatible stuff, is how good Xbox and Xbox 360 games look on the new Xbox. Because without too much effort on the side of Microsoft or the developers, they've now got systems that will push the game up to 1080p, 60 frames a second, even add in HDR, like colour field and all the rest of it. And you know, you can still tell it's an older game because of the polygon count and the sharp edges and things, but they still look so much better than they did on their original systems.
I will agree with you on that one. There's a few games that you've obviously seen me play, which are 360 games, and I'm sure there's one which is an actual Xbox first edition Xbox game. Yeah, like you said, there is tells that it's an old game, you know, not just by the controls but the way it looks. But you would think they purposely designed the game to look that old, but keep up today's standards, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It is bizarre what they can do now.
I think the thing that surprised me the most when these backward compatible, you know, automatic up-resing things sort of started off was the number of games that clearly had texture assets in the game that were a far higher resolution than they needed to be for the system they were running on. I can only assume it's like if it was made on PC rather than downscaling, they just went, screw it. You know, the engine downscales the textures to whatever resolution, and they just left in the original artwork, which now means you benefit from that when you play these games on the new systems.
Yeah. The high street is somewhat dead now. It's obviously it's going to still be open for certain things, but I think things like for the pre-owned game shops, for example, I think they're, like you said, they're either up the ante, but because everything seems to be accessible online now, and because of what's happened within the world, a lot of people don't mind going online shopping. You know, it could basically put them out of business.
The future for the gaming shop is turning into like the gaming cafe kind of thing, where you can go and there'll be PCs to do gaming on, consoles, table space to do your board games.
So it's more of a sort of gathering of gamers type thing rather than just walking by a game. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and then kind of in terms of the actual sales side of it, you know, board games, I think people will still continue to pick up from shops, but then your statues, your memorabilia, all the stuff that kind of goes around the community, I think selling that in a place where people are also going to chill out and enjoy gaming in all its various guises.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're just going to go in there to play on PC for a few hours, and then also realise there's a statue there that you've been looking for months, you know, you're going to snag it while you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with saying that, there is some pros of having those pre-owned GameStops still open. So, for example, you know, you could sell your game back if you got some money worries. You could always buy it back. at a cheaper price again.
Yeah.
And obviously, it could be that little insurance, because I've done it myself, where I've got the physical copy of Witcher 3, but because I've got a digital Xbox, I've downloaded it off Game Pass. But I'm more happy that I've got it physically as well, just in case it gets taken off Game Pass. But we are trying to argue for both sides here, but I think, from my point of view, I think I know which way I'm swaying more to.
I think the problem is we've reached that point where, as much as I will miss physical, and I'll definitely miss the days of chucking a cartridge into your console, turning it on, and the game just being instantly there to play.
Yeah.
Things have moved on. And again, maybe in the future, obviously Nintendo have gone back to cartridges with the Switch, but that's then run into problems again because of the cost of the fact you're having to make essentially an SSD with every sale. Well, it's a SD card rather, which puts the prices up and meant that they've had limited space on them to keep them affordable. But, who knows? Maybe in the future it will get to a point where the cost of SSD storage is cheap enough that having cartridges that they then sell the game on the SSD that you plug in will become the better way of doing it, because to have enough storage space to have 10, 20 games would be too big, or that in a single sale for the console that would be way too expensive. But if they then break it down that you're always paying that £10, £20 for the storage for that one game as you bought the game, that might end up being a viable model some point in the future if somehow games surpass what network speeds and a singular disk inside the system is going to be able to handle. I don't think we'll end up in that situation. No. It's highly unlikely the more I think about it, but that's the only way you could potentially end up back there again, is if games end up being terabytes for a singular game sort of thing, which would be nuts. And I feel sorry for the developers who have to produce all of that content.
So with that being said, we'll run through the pros, just a quick summarise over why to go digital. So they're at your fingertips. You can pre-install, and once the game is released, you can play it straight away.
Pre-installing is huge. Being able to just have the game there, ready to go at midnight.
Yep. And along with that, you can buy through the apps and install on the console. So I know Microsoft offer this, where you can buy through the app, and it'll be on your console, ready to either install, or depending on how you've got your Xbox set up, it will install. You'll never lose them or get them damaged, so they'll always be on the cloud or assigned to your account. So you get a new Xbox like we both just had. It's right. What was that game I downloaded? There we go. Purchase history. You can just whittle them all down again. Cross-buy. So when you buy a Microsoft game on the Xbox, you can play it on the PC.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
So I guess the pros for physical, much that they are, or not. But no, it's. I think, as we've kind of talked about, it's the ability to. I think it's the ownership thing is the big key.
Yeah.
You have a physical thing that you can then sell back or pass to a friend and do things with purely within your own control.
Oh yeah.
A lot of the move to digital, as much as there's a lot of convenience factor to it, it's also the companies are using it to take control. So you no longer own your games, you no longer own your music. You're purely just paying into a service to get access to them, which does have the downside of at any point they can just take that away from you. But I think we kind of operate in a world where the likelihood of that happening is kind of deemed small enough that everyone's willing in inverted commas is probably a strong word, but I think it's just the way of the world as it is, unfortunately. As we said, it's there. If the online services disappear, obviously physical copies, again, tentatively with newer games, but in theory physical copies enable you to play offline. Discounts is another kind of big selling point for physical. It's like when we got Mortal Kombat, it was because it was like half price to buy it on Amazon as a physical copy versus what the digital copy was, which I think's been what's put a lot of people off digital up to this point, is how much cheaper the physical versions ended up being, which is, and again, I think the tides on that are slowly turning. I think there's definitely in the earlier days of PS3, no, not PS3, sort of more PS4 and Xbox One era digital, they were still very much wanting to keep Game and GameStop and other retailers like that on side. So they would keep things on the digital stores at RRP for a good length of time and give retail that opportunity to undercut them.
Yeah.
Whereas I think now that digital's being more accepted, I don't think Microsoft and Sony are as afraid, or even the other publishers are as afraid to go, actually, no, screw it. We'll sell the digital copy for 10 quid less than what the physical copy is, because we get more money that way anyway, and we don't care about physical retailers. It's definitely going to give more options, hopefully keep prices down a bit. Does mean that those like middle tier indie and B grade developers can then push out a game for £30-40 and get a good profit. So it's hard to see the downsides other than you don't own a physical thing. And now for the news. The Xbox Live service has changed to being called Xbox Network. Additionally, Xbox Live Gold membership soon won't be needed for party chat and free-to-play multiplayer games. Brad Rossetti tweeted saying, Xbox Insiders in Alpha Skip Ahead and Alpha Today, we are flighting some new features. Multiplayer in free-to-play games, looking for groups, and party chat on Xbox no longer requires an Xbox Live Gold membership as we flight and test these service changes ahead of general availability.
There's been a brief look at the Lord of the Rings Golem gameplay. The gameplay is very short and not showing very much. Outriders developers promised to permanently brand cheaters with a HUD watermark to expose their cheating ways. Within the demo, they have seen over 200 players, which is 0.1% of players, cheated. They have said that there will be consequences, not only with matchmaking where they will not be with legit players, but there will also be a watermark briefly over their HUD.
John Wick director announces Ghost of Tsushima movie. PlayStation 4 exclusive Ghost of Tsushima is being turned into a movie with John Wick director Chad Stahelski on board as director. PlayStation Productions is also behind the upcoming Tom Holland-fronted Uncharted film, now coming to cinemas in 2022. And HBO's The Last of Us TV series. Sony has said it has big plans to expand more on its video game franchises in the future.
Top Apex Legends players banned for using a DOS attack to win a ranked game. There are 2 videos that appeared on Reddit showing a game in which 2 ranked Apex Legends players were knocked down only for the server to mysteriously crash. As soon as they came back, they were dead on the floor with the 2 suspects hanging over them. It appears that the offending 4th and 6th ranked players were then accused of carrying out the DOS attack once they started losing in order to get an easy win.
And that's the end of the news and the end of the podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. And this is goodbye from me, Klaw.
And a goodbye from me, Xiong. And as always, guys, keep it geeky.